Welcome to the Curator Salon podcast. I'm Geeta Joshi, and today I am talking to artist Johanna Rossi. Welcome, Johanna.
Thank you very much, Geeta.
I wanted us to talk about your artwork and your ongoing journey with art. So let's start at the beginning, because you didn't quite train in art directly. It was something else related. What was that?
Exactly, yeah. I studied art and design at college at A-levels, and then I went on to a tech college where I studied art and design. And there we studied all sorts, 3D, pottery, painting, drawing. And then I went in to specialise in interior architecture, and I did a degree for 3 years at Brighton University in that.
And from there you moved to Monaco, which is really when you started painting.
Yeah, well, when I finished university and I finished my course in interior architecture, I knew very much that I didn't actually want to work in architecture, because actually even when I went to go and study architecture, what I really wanted to do, looking back, was to actually study illustration. When I came out of university, I struggled a lot. One, because it was 9/11 around that time. So it's a very, very difficult time for finding new jobs. And also because I didn't really want to work for an architect or an interior architect. In the end, I ended up working for the Walt Disney Company, and I learned how to design children's wear, which was great actually, because I learned a lot of computer skills in that kind of time I was there, and I learned how to do Illustrator, and that has really served me well throughout my whole career in any kind of job I've done. And then my husband was born here in Monaco, so we moved down to Monaco, and I was doing a lot of freelancing actually for the Walt Disney Company, and then I managed to find a few jobs here doing little graphic projects, logos, that kind of thing. And then I ended up working for a photographer who had a fashion magazine here. And that, although that was creative, it was a lot of photoshopping, a lot of touching up photographs and helping him on shoots and things like that. But I did learn a lot from him about being a bit more perfectionist in your work, which is something I struggled with before. I'm an Aries as well. Creative, fiery Aries ball. So, I don't naturally like to finish jobs well. I'm like, okay, on to the next thing, the ideas are flowing. So from that time with him, actually, I did learn a lot about more being precise and precision and ways of working and discipline and everything. So that was great. And then my husband comes from a family of restaurateurs. And we actually met at art college and we studied at university together. But he had the idea he wanted to open a restaurant like his family, and so that adventure sent us off in a new chapter. And although we did all the design of that ourselves, which was an amazing project actually, it was a kind of a year-long project, designing as well from A to Z, literally. And then that's when I kind of started to go further and further away from my initial love and passion of painting. So even though I kind of always had one toe dipped in creativity in some way, whether it was designing a menu or a poster, it wasn't kind of where my heart, lay. And then I think it was about a year after we opened the restaurant, my son was born. And that was really the start of this whole new chapter. And I think what we're going to talk about now.
So how did motherhood change things for you?
Hugely. In a very dramatic way, actually. I had a very good pregnancy. It kind of, my whole life changed actually when I went to the hospital to have my son. In ways it's actually very hard to put into words. Firstly, the birth was extremely traumatic, very, very hard birth, which meant a very long recovery. And my whole life kind of changed because I was physically not well. And unable to kind of get out as I did before. I went from kind of being in a very social environment, the restaurant, seeing a lot of people, to then kind of being a little bit stranded at home with a baby, really little support. My husband was never here either. And that was really kind of, I felt like I've had the rug taken away from me in my all different areas of my life. It sounds quite dramatic, but actually it was for me, because Leandro coming into my life, really, it was a bit like he opened this whole world for me. And it was kind of a gradual thing where I just felt really uncomfortable in my life, in my own skin, everything. I just became really conscious of kind of all my feelings, my health, the way I saw the world. And I think it was kind of like a lot of people that call that kind of their awakening, where they become very much conscious of what's going on around them. But because I had had very little guidance kind of as I became a woman, and, you know, I had very little experience with children, it was a very difficult time for me. And like, as I say, I have never made a secret of that time. I felt very, very lost. And actually we were on a ski trip in the mountains. I think Leandro was only about 2 years old. And I remember I was just lying in bed one night and just feeling horrendous. And I was like, what is it what do I need to do? You know, what's going to help with this? And I just had this idea and I said, when I go home, I'm going to make cards. You know, it was just something really simple. I'm going to make cards. And so that's what I did. I started making little labels for actually a friend of mine who did crochet back then. And it was just something to use my hands. And it felt just really good. Because I'm terrible for buying paper products, and and just put me in an art shop and I'm in heaven. And it was just kind of getting a little bit of that joy back. And as we were talking before we started recording, history kind of a bit repeats myself, because when I was 17 and choosing my studies, my father was like, you're not going to earn money by doing art. Studying art is just not going to bring you money. You need to do something else. Luckily, I had a very good professor who set him straight on that. But my husband was kind of worried because he said, "Oh, you're spending a bit too much time on this. I don't think it's worth. It's not translating into money. This, and that was like that was a real trigger for me. Triggered a lot of negative feelings and feeling like I wasn't allowed to do that. It was like, oh, I shouldn't enjoy myself. I shouldn't have this ease in my life or this enjoyment. And I remember the day I actually packed up all my art stuff. And I just remember that day, I just felt so sad. I was like, well, but at the same time, I'd been going through a lot of health problems, as I said, after the birth of my son. And my body was kind of having a bit of a breakdown. And I really wanted to get myself out of that as well. So I started looking into different ways that I could heal my body naturally, because I'd been to so many doctors and they were like, yes, you have a lot of inflammation, but we don't know why, etc. So I looked into healing that inflammation. Basically, I ended up down the route of becoming a health coach. Anyway, so I ended up having this coaching business, and ultimately I just got very ill because it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. My body was like, "What are you doing?" And learn about the food, learn about the health coaching for you, because you need to heal yourself. It's going to serve you well for your family, to nourish them as you go forward. It wasn't something I was supposed to give away, all that knowledge and that energy. So I got very sick, and I got diagnosed with Crohn's during that time as well. There was a moment when I was like, I need to create. I'm a creative, and I just knew there was a point where it was like, you have to stop kidding yourself now and give yourself permission, allow yourself to be an artist, So I let everything go, because there was no way I would have time to do my art. It just wasn't going to happen, and for my health as well. So I let it all go.
So this was at the point now you decided really to immerse yourself in being an artist and your creative endeavors.
Exactly. I decided that I needed that time, and I deserved that time to concentrate on my art, because obviously I hadn't had a paintbrush in my hand for over 20 years. I just knew that I couldn't do it all. It was really a period where I defined what my all was, and my all had to be very small if I was going to manage it. Because I'm someone, I suffer from feeling overwhelmed and feeling anxious, and it kind of was that turning point for me where I needed to kind of say to myself, this is the point where you start to take more care of yourself, because you're starting to understand who you are, what you want, and what's important to you. That was kind of three main things for me, And I'd kind of I'd understood I had choices in life rather than, life living me. I could start to live it. But then again, I was a newbie. I was kind of novice, all this kind of, okay, I can kind of make my days a bit more, how I want them. And last year was very much about exploration. My word for last year was explore. And I let myself experiment, explore, pick the brushes up again. And if you've been following my work, or if you go to my website or my social media feeds, you'll see the work has progressed and changed a lot. And that's literally just me unearthing what needed to be unearthed to get to where I am now.
And you talked before about using feelings as the compass.
Yeah, that's been a huge thing for me because, as I said at the beginning, this started from bad, negative feelings. When I had Raising Women and I had my podcast and I was trying to encourage women through their own journeys, I was always very wary that I didn't want people to think that, I had it all sorted because I was coaching. All this journey, and even now, what I paint now is very much about my own feelings of being uncomfortable in myself and in the world. And a lot of that has been around self-doubt. So really, for me, this journey of self-discovery has been about getting away from negative feelings, understanding how I actually want to feel in life, and understanding what makes me feel that way. So instead of, last year was like, okay, I'm an artist, and I know my medium, I love painting, so I started painting, and my paintings it was like a tap had been opened, it was loads of color, loads of texture. There was a lot going on in those paintings at the beginning of last year. And there's some of them, like, I don't think I'll even would want to sell them because they mean a lot to me. It's like so much of me have gone into some of those. And then as the year went on, my art just it changed a lot, and it got a lot more minimal as I kind of was like, I don't need to say as much now, it was kind of like, I'd rather say a lot with less, But then I was still kind of not really happy with my process, how my days were, how I felt during my days. I'm painting. I'm an artist. I'm selling paintings, but I still don't feel good. It was very much a process of, okay, write down all these negative feelings and what's making me feel that way. And then on the kind of the other side of the page, right, how is it I want to feel? And I'm a very visual person. So a lot of that actually go through images of kind of like what evoke feelings in me. I'm like, because, I've made no omittance of that. I've felt lost a lot in my life and along this path. And when I visually see things, it really helps me to pinpoint, where I want to be or what I want to do. And I make vision boards fresh every year, and I update them for that reason, to keep me focused. So at the end of last year, I spent weeks kind of really little on social media because I find that very hard, and we can talk about that afterwards because I think that's really important for artists now. But I just sketched and I sketched and I sketched without any expectation or without thinking, I want to sketch this. I was just letting my hand move and say, okay, what's coming up? Now, obviously, it's no surprise that was going to be figurative, because I think really to describe this journey as a woman, and to describe those feelings in a minimal way, without having to feel like I have to write an essay with every painting or every piece, it was going to have to be figurative for me. So that's where I'm at now. And my word for this year actually is focus. And my mantra is more slow and steady. Trying to calm the inner Aries. I can often feel like if I don't get kind of an immediate response to something, that it's no good. That's kind of me, a character trait of me where I have a lot of self-doubt, and I don't feel like what I'm doing is enough, what I've done in the day is enough, what I'm creating is enough. And that comes kind of like, from stories growing up. So this year really is about focusing and allowing myself to kind of, grab onto those feelings that I want to feel, and keep on that slow and steady track of, following that through and giving myself permission to have time.
So what does focus and slow and steady mean in terms of exhibiting and selling for you?
what I did also at the end of last year was set out a plan. Those who follow me on social media will have seen I did some stories about it. Because although I'm kind of, as I spoke before, I like to rush on. I'm actually somebody, I need to be very organized because I suffer this overwhelm. I like to have a plan. I like to know where I'm going. And I planned out kind of the year, a projection for 2020, but I really kind of concentrated on the first 6 months of this year, from January to July. What I've done is, I think I've got 6 releases. But one of my kind of dreams this year was to open a print shop. When I say focus and slow and steady, I've understood that with things like social media, the platforms I'm using, which are mainly Instagram and Pinterest, these take time. And even though you feel like you're putting a lot of energy into it, it takes time for people to see you. And it takes time for people to understand your work. And it takes time for that kind of ball to get in motion. And, it's the snowball effect, the domino effect. And I'm really lucky because I have a wonderful community online and I've made some amazing connections. I found that really supportive in my journey, as an artist as well. And personally, actually, I've made some really nice contacts. So what I've done is program the end of January and February, I'm going to release prints. Then in March, my first collection of paintings for this year. So my idea, looking at that kind of focus and slow and steady, is that at the beginning of the year, I really wanted to kind of carry on with this practice of sketching. So in the morning, I'm doing warm-up sketches, I'm sketching and then painting and drawing in ink on paper, and then building up to kind of canvas in the afternoon. So my idea to release the prints at the beginning of the year was that would continue this practice of drawing and sketching and different ideas and getting feelings out onto paper and how would they look, and then those translating into canvases later on. From a business side, to be able to kind of get those prints out at the beginning of the year and then, just slowly grow them through social media, through Pinterest, and kind of build up that interest throughout the year, knowing that they're there already, and then I can concentrate on my original paintings. Pinterest is new to me this year. Although the reason I want to use Pinterest is, one, because personally I love Pinterest. I always end up down rabbit holes in Pinterest, but it doesn't bring stress in me. It doesn't bring like Instagram does. It doesn't make me feel antsy or anything. I just really enjoy it. And I think the potential for business through Pinterest is high. I've downloaded workbooks about it already. In the 3 weeks which I've been implementing changes, I've seen a huge rise in unique viewers. And now I'm slowly starting to, as I create my prints, get them on there as well and get them shared out. And why I love it so much for this year is because Pinterest is all about the slow and steady. It's very much about kind of, you plant those seeds and then you watch them grow. And I just find it much more, for me, my character type, the energy and the time I have, found it just in these few weeks, much more fruitful. You haven't got the connections like you have on Instagram, that personal connection. But I just find, I've been on Instagram now for probably, I think, 4 or 5 years. And I just find a lot of energy, even if you kind of have done courses and you've learned things there's a lot of energy that has to go in it to make it work, I feel. Whereas Pinterest, I find it much more enjoyable.
And this is, I think, one of the big differences, because before everybody was on Instagram, Pinterest was the visual supposed social media platform. But of course, it's more a search engine than a social media platform anyway, isn't it? Because typically we go on there to find something, right? We enter something into the search word field, rather than on Instagram, we might go on to see what people are up to. And really we get kind of very much, it's all about the recent feed. Whereas Pinterest, you're actually searching for something and you might find something that's been there for 2 years. As you say, that snowball effect and the potential for that is really great. So let's actually move along to Instagram a little bit, because I think this is one of the conversations we had earlier around, it can be overwhelming. You can feel like putting your work out there, the number of likes and things like that is looking for validation, especially if you've got self-doubt around it.
I will say, firstly, with the positives, Instagram, it's an amazing tool. It's amazing. I am extremely grateful for Instagram because it allows me the freedom to mother. In Monaco, it's very hard to do what I do and make a good living out of it. It's very special here. So Instagram allows me to be at home, work from home, and have a window to the whole world. And this, honestly, this is an amazing thing. The problem I have with Instagram, and it's a very personal thing, I think a lot of people can use it and they have no problems at all. One is the kind of time aspects, which this year, as I say, with my focus, my slow and steady, I've very much allotted time in the day and say, okay, this is my time which I concentrate on Instagram. These are the times I post. That has really helped me so far with the whole kind of energy level and feeling like it's kind of sucking good energy away from me. But it's that kind of, as you say, the most important thing, I think, is feeding that self-doubt. So if you're someone who already has that kind of feeling of, am I good enough? Is my work good enough? How's this going to be perceived? Already, one, it's hard to put your work out there into the world to be seen. Two, I think you also, with, as you say, Instagram is a social thing, so you have to put yourself out there, which I'm not very good at. I'm very introverted. I'm quite happy living as a hermit. Kind of three, that thing of like, okay, now I've put it out there. The whole thing with Instagram is that, kind of growing numbers, converting those numbers. So ultimately, even though it's not about how many followers, how many likes. If you do get a piece of work that doesn't have as much likes as maybe something else, even though you reason with yourself and say, okay, maybe the time I posted, I didn't put the right hashtags, or, it's just not getting seen now because of those reasons. You still had that thing of, oh, maybe it wasn't as good as the last thing I did, So even as much as you say, I don't think like that, or it's not about that, for somebody like me, the thoughts will always come into my head. And also kind of then, when I was online quite a lot with my podcast, it was that expectation feeling of, oh, what are people going to expect of me? And if you start posting like a lot or putting a lot of yourself out there, it was like, oh, people now expect that of me now. And I don't like that. I don't like to feel obliged about doing things, and especially when it comes to my work. I was like, I don't want to feel like I have to be on here all the time or give so much away, or, that was a big thing when I let go of the podcast and everything. That was a big weight actually off my shoulders, because I felt like it was just too much for me. But because my art really is me, it's a lot easier for me to share now, but this year I'm very conscious of kind of what I'm sharing, how much I'm sharing, and because I like to properly connect with people. And, I think to properly connect with people, you have to be authentic and you have to share certain parts of yourself. So I have a tendency to overshare sometimes, but I'm being a little bit more reserved about that this year, I think, just for my own energy levels.
So the next thing coming up for you is the print launch at the end of January. And where can people find you online?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so if you're on Instagram, you can find me at Johanna Rossi Art. And my website is the same, johannarossiart.com. And if you go from the profile linked in my Instagram, you will get all the different links to my print shop and my original art. And then if you want to get in touch.
Brilliant. And I will put all of that in the show notes. Thank you, Johanna, so much for spending time with me this morning.
Thanks, Gita. It's been an absolute pleasure.